Well, hello and welcome to another online Bible study. We are still in the book of Proverbs for our Wednesday night study. So this is number 6 besides the introduction in these instructional proverbs, this time regarding bugs, birds, and beasts. It's just kind of interesting that when you begin to look into the book of Proverbs, in fact, probably one of the most famous that you can recall is in Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. But did you know that there are over 30 verses and at least 18 creatures, whether an insect, a reptile, a fowl, an animal, that I found mentioned in the book of Proverbs? An ant, a locust, the horse leech, the spider, the lizard, the snake, the dog, this greyhound, the swallow, birds in general, the ox and the beast, the horse, the lion, the he-goat, and the conies. All of these are used to describe something or someone to attract our attention and to make it easier for us to digest and remember. Now, some of them are a little bit needing explanation. We talk about conies, you're going to find that. And it said that it's a rock rabbit. In fact, we'll probably start right there with him in just a little bit. But they're very different from the rabbit that we know. But in all of these creatures, they teach some sort of wisdom or understanding, and of course, a whole lot more. And we're going to begin in chapter 30 because there are several creatures that are mentioned in chapter 30. And though this is not alphabetical, it's not chronological, it just happened to be that we're going to look a little bit at the conies. It's the conies from Proverbs 30 and 26 are but a feeble folk, yet make they their houses in the rocks. Along with the coney is the ant, the locust, and the spider. And you go back up into that chapter, same chapter, and you read a little bit more. And the writer, who is Agar, excuse me, not noted as Solomon, whoever this may be, but he's making mention that there are 4 things which are little upon the earth, but are exceeding wise. In other words, there are some creatures that are small, but they show great wisdom in their instincts. Of course, they're God-given instincts, but they show great wisdom in overcoming their disabilities. For instance, when we look at the ant, it shows preparation in the proper and precise time. Again, when we look at whether it be the ant or the locust, the ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer along with the spider. But look at that. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. You know, the ant has very few defenses really against their larger creatures, and though we know them to be very strong at their own weight, they're not very strong at being able to keep you and I from crushing hundreds of them with the bottom of our foot. Yet they prepare for their future at the proper time when food is available. They are always busy preparing for a time when they cannot provide, and they do not procrastinate. John Gill calls them in his commentary a pattern, of industry and diligence. They're also mentioned in chapter 6 and verse 8. And in that verse, you find it declares the ant is a teacher for the sluggard. The ant teaches continual, creative, cooperative effort and working on a united plan, and they do so without a ruler or even a guide. Then, of course, we have what are noted as the conies we mentioned. The conies are a weak creature without any great defenses except for their teeth. So it shows great wisdom in making its home among the rocks and in the rocks. This way, the one who is hunting them cannot get at them in their refuge. So what do? They show great wisdom in finding a shelter that is stronger than they are and provides a defense against the hunter who is stronger than they are. In other words, they provide something through their wisdom that they cannot provide through their physical efforts. There's some great wisdom with this. Where we find weaknesses in ourselves, there are ways to find strength. The clearest weakness we have, of course, is in being justified by the law. We cannot. The flesh is weak in that. So we have no defense against the law. But you can find refuge in the rock Jesus Christ. Now, in taking this to just temporal matters, think about it in this particular way. You can be more creative than this in your own studies. But think about it in the sense that you're weak in your flesh. So what do? You buy health insurance. You buy a defense. You get into a defense or auto insurance. You don't want to have your car destroyed by someone else, stolen, and there are defenses against that. Homeowners, renters insurance, all to protect what might be lost, stolen, or destroyed. We put our money in a bank, or we put it in investments to protect and provide for the future. We may be a feeble folk. We may have a weakness, but what you do, don't complain about your feebleness and your weakness. Be wise and find your defense, that which is stronger than you. We also saw the locusts. The locusts have no king, yet they go forth, all of them, by bands. Now, this particular locust, of course, most of us are familiar with the grasshopper. There's all sorts of varieties. This is apparently the desert locust spoken of here. And it's primarily, interestingly enough, a very solitary creature. And it can be destroyed, again, with a foot, with a hand, with anything that you can crush. It's a pest. You can get rid of it quite easily. But when the need arises, they end up changing. They are transformed in their color and in their temperament, and they become impossible to defeat because they go forth, all of them, in bands. In other words, they modify their behavior. Usually a very fearful insect, they become fearless in their quest when they are banded together in their hordes. I won't even talk about some of the stories. It's fascinating to read about locusts, again, how they're solitary creatures until they need not be, and when they need not be, when they need to be cooperative and band together, they can band together in the hundreds of thousands or even millions. God used them, of course, in the 8th plague against the nation of Egypt, and it says that they ate every green thing that had not already been destroyed by hail. And in Joel 2:25, God calls them his army, which he sent to pester the Israelites. The Christian, you and I, are provided a protection when we band together as a New Testament church. A church is a place where the group lifts up and strengthens one another, and we cannot be so easily destroyed. This is why, excuse me, discord and division are so destructive and divisive to a church. The locusts modify their temperament and behavior to become stronger, and they teach us of learning to join with others, to be social with others of the same kind. Then we have that which is mentioned in Proverbs 30 and 28, the spider. The spider, it says, taketh hold with her hands and is in king's palaces. Now this was interesting because many will say this is actually, should be translated as a lizard. And I'll mention that in just a little bit. But just to take it as the spider taketh hold with her hands and is in king's palaces, She's industrious, she's busy, she's always involved, and she is in the premier spots. No matter what anybody says or does, she can be in the king's palace. The sluggard, on the other hand, folds his hand, hides his hands, and he won't even use them when needed. Now, if it were to mean the lizard, and some translate it this way, it's just like with lizards in our backyard. Our kids can catch them. I can't. They're a little too fast for me. But you can easily catch a lizard with your hand. Yet, they're in the king's palace. You can't stop them. They're going to be there. The spider taketh hold with their hands and is in the king's, or the lizard taketh hold of the little hands that they've got that crawl up the walls. Whatever it is, it's a picture of wisdom in the creature that cannot be stopped from getting into the best guarded fortresses of men. The Christian may be weak and easy prey for the enemy, but we can be found in the king's palace, the King of Kings palace. We can be found in the King of Kings prayer room before his throne. Let's stay in this chapter, though, and look at chapter 30 and verse 15 at another interesting creature that's mentioned in Proverbs, the horse leech. Here we find it says, the horse leech hath two daughters, crying, give, give. There are three things that are never satisfied, yea, four things say not, it is enough. They'll never say it is enough. When we begin to look at this particular reference, it's an idea, this horse leech is a kind of a blood-sucking, they call it annelid or worm. Some will call it actually a water worm, because it will be in the water and attach itself to either the foot of a horse or enter into the mouth of the horse while it's drinking and attach itself and begin feasting on the blood of the host. The creature is used to teach us about the insatiable appetite of the horse leech, using that to teach us about the insatiable appetite of the flesh, something that you need to be aware of. The horse leech is, of course, coupled with four things: the grave, a barren womb, dry ground, and fire. What he's doing is he is describing the nature or characteristic of these things, or even people who can never find contentment. They're always covetous. This is the flesh. You will never satisfy the hunger of your flesh. That's important to understand. And you need wisdom, which calls for us instead to choose contentment, to choose to be content with such things as you have. You see, the inability to be satisfied leaves a person perpetually frustrated. And the person who gives themselves over to the lust of the flesh will find that their flesh will never be satisfied. Learn wisdom and understand, and learn to be satisfied with your relationship with God and what he has given you and how he has made you. That's the key right there. That's where wisdom is. Now, along with all of the other creatures that we have mentioned, we also find the eagle and the serpent mentioned together in Proverbs 30 and 19. They are included as part of a mysterious process, a way of travel, and bewildering to ponder. It says the way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. What he's talking about here is that these are mysterious, and this is coupled with, get this, the way of an adulterous woman. That's back in same chapter, verse 20, the very next verse. It says she partakes in her sin, and then upon removing the evidence, all is back to normal. It says she indulges like she ate something, wipes her mouth, and it's all gone. Well, it's the idea that the eagle's agility in the air and the serpent's ability to move upon the rock are observed, and their movements are precise and made with ease. They don't struggle. Well, it's the same thing with an adulterous woman. She breaks her vows, and then she acts without any difficulty as if anything even happened. The way of an eagle and other, these are mysterious. Well, so is the way of an adulterous woman. Pay attention to the behavior of individuals and know that you're not going to be able to see and find out this person. They're going to hide everything. Well, along with that, we find also the lion, the greyhound, and a he-goat used in verses 30 and 31. A lion which is strongest among beasts and turneth not away for any. And in verse 31, a greyhound and a he-goat also, and a king against whom there is no rising. In all of this, what you're seeing is there are four things, the lion, the greyhound, the he-goat, and the king, that are all used to give you a picture of how you carry yourself. The greyhound is elegant, sleek, and the fastest of all dogs. The he-goat stands out among goats with his beard and horns, and if you look elsewhere, you'll find that he takes the lead. He marches in front of the flock as provider and protector without fear. And of course, the lion. He's regal, he's strong, and he carries himself without fear as the strongest among beasts. You know that the lion is mentioned 6 other times in the book of Proverbs. His roar is used twice in 19:12 and 20 in verse 2. That roar causes fear. And you know the lion's roar can apparently travel up to 5 miles. That roar is like the king's wrath, far-reaching and full of fear when on the hunt. The lion is used also 3 other times in 22:13, 26:13, and 28:15. But in this case, the lion's nearness. Twice we're told by the slothful man that there's a lion out there. There's something to fear. He's near, so I can't get out. Once the word lion is used along with the bear to use the cries of hunger to illustrate a wicked ruler. Their cries cause the poor man to fear. The lion is also used to describe the character and the bravery of a righteous man. We've already seen the lion without fear because of his strength, and now we see him because of his boldness. It says in 28:1, the wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous, or the man that is right with God, the man who has been made right with God, has the confidence of a lion. He fears no one else. Righteousness and godliness gives you a clear conscience, and it gives reason for men to be brave and to act bravely. They've done no wrong. They cannot be accused, so they don't walk around like a wimp. We also find the bird. The bird is used 5 times in the book of Proverbs. Chapter 1, verse 17. Chapter 6, verse 5, 7 and 23, 26 and verse 2, and then 27 and verse 8. The swallow specifically is mentioned in 1, and in that verse it says the bird and the swallow, and most will say it's the same bird, the same swallow. And it's 26 and 2 where it says, as the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. In other words, the bird gets up and takes off, and they go every which way. They're always busy. But what does that bird do? He comes back to a nest. As the swallow flying, again, he flies for long distance. But what does the swallow do? He returns to his homeland, to his nest. The idea from that is that the causeless curse is not to be feared. The ones who throw the causeless curse around will do nothing but have curses fall upon them. They fall upon their own head. In chapter 1 and verse 17, the bird is representing sinners who have the net spread in front of them. But they've also taken the bait. They fall into the trap. And he's saying here with this, a bird doesn't pay any attention to the net. You know what? You can lay the net out right in front of them, and you have the enticement, whether it be the corn, the seeds, or whatever it might be under the net. They are so taken with the bait that they fall into the trap. That's why he's saying these birds represent sinners. Don't pay attention to them. Don't go with them. They have the net spread right in front of them, and they'll fall into the trap. The bird who wanders from her nest in chapter 27 and verse 8 represents the man who wanders away from his appointed place. People are always looking for something greener on the other side, some place better. But the fact is that the man who wanders away from his nest is the same way, or his appropriate place is the same as a bird who wanders away from her nest. They are now vulnerable, and they leave their family vulnerable as well. You'll also find that the swine is mentioned in chapter 11 and 22, just simply as a picture of an ornament of gold as a useless ornament in the swine's snout. He says that's compared to a woman without discretion. A woman, in other words, who has lost her modesty, has lost her true beauty. The horse is used twice in chapter 21, verse 31, and chapter 26 and verse 3. The first regards preparing for battle. You prepare the horse for battle. You get him prepared, but then you know victory is in the Lord, not in the horse. The latter verse in 26:3 compares the need for a whip for the horse and compares it to the need for a fool to have a rod come upon his back. In other words, both have natures that need drastic measures to teach them. And we find the word beast used in 12:10 concerning the character or behavior, again, of a righteous man. A righteous man will recognize the nature of the animal, what kind it is, what kind of care it needs, and how to take care of it. In other words, he values his beast, whatever it might be. We also find the ox. The ox is used for a sign of investment and productivity in chapter 14 and verse 4. And they are used to warn the unwise and the simple men who go blindly to their slaughter with a strange woman in chapter 7 and verse 22. In chapter 15 and verse 17, it's talking here about a big, juicy steak like that you have in the ox. And he uses it this way: better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. Here's the wisdom of building and promoting a home and meals where love is enjoyed rather than an atmosphere of hate and anger. John Gill calls this herbs a traveler's meal. He says it's hard to have any poorer meal than that one. But this simple meal, contrasted with the steaks waiting in the stalls on that ox, are better. Though they are fit for a king, the herbs, the traveler's meal, is better to enjoy where love is than where there's hatred between the people. The riches of enjoyments cannot be enjoyed in a family that has hatred towards one another. Then the last animal I'll make mention of is the dog. Used only twice, but both are very picturesque. One of them in Proverbs 26 and 11 tells us the fool will return to his folly in the same way that a dog by nature returns to eat its own vomit. The other is that in 26 and verse 17, where it talks about taking a dog by the ears. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him, is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. You get the picture? you're in trouble. No matter what you do, no matter how you proceed after taking that dog by the ears, you're in trouble. The point is, if it's not your strife, leave it alone. Meddling with trouble that is not yours is not to be done. Bugs, birds, and beasts, we can learn from them. Some teach wisdom, and some explain the fool, the unwise, and the simple. They'll make you pause, and they'll give you a cause to remember these wise sayings. Take note of them. And when you read them, when you come across them in your reading of the Proverbs, even if you have to struggle with understanding, that makes you remember it even more, even better. Lord bless you in your study in the book of Proverbs. God bless you.